Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with another Mount Blade 2 Bannerlord developer blog video. Today we're taking a look at the blog from February 22nd, 2018, which is another Q&A, this time with the lead engine programmer. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Greetings, warriors of Calradia. One of the most important and complicated tasks during the development process of Mount Blade to Bannerlord was to develop our engine. Using a proprietary engine instead of licensing an existing one might look like an unnecessary complication, but it's actually vital for what we want Bannerlord to be. For a start, the game would not be as moddable as it is going to be without it. Our engine programmer, Gökhan Uras, explains a bit more about the engine of Bannerlord in this week's dev blog. Okay, so he joined in 2012, and let's see, what does he do during his day? I am mostly at my desk coding and debugging. My main focus is post effects pipeline, general shading, and CPU performance. So it sounds like he is working on like visuals and optimization, basically. So I also do lots of tooling for our editor. I constantly check our issue tracker to see if there is anything that needs tending to right away. I am also in constant communication with my team. We always strive to achieve higher quality in our engine. To that end, we always collaborate with each other, and the feedback from the rest of the team is always invaluable. On top of that, I am always trying to implement new features for our artists to achieve the visual quality that they desire from our game. Alright, and then here we can see the temporal scalable ambient obscurance in the lighting. And so we basically start with a very flat, let's see, with it off we start with like a very flat shading, and then here we see the shadows become very like dark, and it really adds, at least in this picture, a lot of depth to it. So what do you like most about Bannerlord? The modding capability of the game. The modding community did wonders with Warband. I can't even imagine what they will come up with. There's a word missing there. What they will come up with using our brand new editor and scripting system, maybe. Our editor is very feature rich. It contains smaller tools like a resource browser, particle editor, cloth editor, atmosphere editor, skeleton editor, flora editor, material editor, and texture editor. So basically an editor for everything that you would need to tweak. We have a prefab system in place to easily reuse entity hierarchies across scenes. We have a very detailed terrain editing system for painting height maps, texture, layers, and floras, and you can also easily import height maps and layer weights from outside sources to modify in the editor. We also support real-time loading of resources to ease our artist workflow. Aside from building scenes, modders can add C# scripts to any entity to create any mechanic they want to achieve mod-specific behaviors. Okay, so basically if you want to edit it, you can do it. So we're going to have like terrain editing systems, which is something that Warband didn't really have. You could launch the game in editor mode, and there was like a terrain tweaking option built into the actual game. But in order to do things on a broader scale and more efficiently, you actually have to download like third-party map editors, which at this point are very outdated, and so it's hard in this day and age to tweak Warband maps, just because the programs are so outdated, and the game has actually been patched beyond them, and it's very difficult to get them to work with the current version of the game. But yeah, so now we're going to have systems and editors that will be able to take care of all of that in like one package, rather than, you know, having to for example, if you wanted to make like an entirely new map, you'd have to download I think it's Thorgrim's map editor. It's been a while since I've used it, but essentially Thorgrim's would allow you to upload or load into the program an image, not like a topographical map or anything like that. Basically, you would have to color code the regions to correspond with essentially the different types of terrain that you can have in Warband, and you could do it in like Photoshop or something and have it be a flat image, and then when you import it into Thorgrim's, it would take that picture and turn it into like a height map and paint the various terrains on it. But it did it a bit rough, and so you would still have to go through and make several tweaks by hand in order to make the map look good. Otherwise, it looks very rough. So it's not a great system. Obviously, it worked because we've got a lot of great Warband mods that have really cool, really detailed custom maps. But now things should be significantly easier, so hopefully we'll see even more of those types of mods because it should be, you know, far less complicated than it is now. So what's the most difficult thing that you solved so far during the production of Bannerlord? It's not something I solved myself, but scaling from approximately 20 people to approximately 80 people was a really difficult process. We had to change things in order to work efficiently with that many people. We needed to change our version control system and issue tracking system with our workflow throughout the office. As an engine team, our code affects everybody in office, from gameplay teams to artists, so we needed to ensure that nobody is affected by our faults. To that end, we implemented an automated test system which rejects the work if anything breaks before the change goes out to everybody. We needed to add visual tests to the system, which compares screenshots of valid ones to current ones to catch shading bugs, which can be easily overlooked and resurface weeks later. During this period, we also established an extremely good quality assurance team and learned to work with them efficiently to minimize any issues that could affect workflow. It looks easier on paper, but changing any habits in life is a hard process, and for working habits, it is the same. So yeah, it seems like a lot of the struggles they've had in development of this game stem from, you know, going from this very, very small indie development team to this fairly large, still indie. They're not working with any publishers. They're not associated with Paradox anymore. But I mean, that's getting very close to the size of like a AAA development team on a much bigger project. So they've definitely had to, you know, deal with this huge expansion happening while also developing this game. So what is he currently working on? I'm juggling a few things these days. I'm finalizing a very big refractor on the agent rendering system, which improved our CPU performance by nearly 15%. I'm at the polishing stage of contact hardening shadows for high-end configurations, and along with this, I'm trying to find optimizations to shadow rendering. Also, I am working closely with one of our artists to improve our tree shading, and I started to tinker with our editor to improve usability according to feedback we get from our artists. Now, one thing I want to mention on for this topic specifically, by that I mean what are they currently working on, because a few people take these as indications that the game is very, very far away from release, because, oh, if they're still working on this, then they must be nowhere near completion. And that's not necessarily true, especially for a developer like Tailworlds, because I always go back to Bethesda, but that's just another developer that I'm I'm more familiar with their process, and I like them as a developer, so I always go back to them. But essentially, with a bigger developer like Bethesda, what they'll do is their teams will be working on different projects at the same time, and so the concept artist team, or just the concept team in general, is going to do the groundwork for a game, and then once they have all the concept stuff done for this game, they're going to pass it on to the development team, who's going to start actually making the art assets and writing the code for the game. Meanwhile, that concept team isn't just going to go on vacation. They're moving on to the next project. And so, like, the development team might be working on Skyrim while the concept team has already moved on to coming up with ideas for Fallout 4. That type of thing. Tale Worlds doesn't work like that. They only have one project, Bannerlord. So if they're not working on Bannerlord, they're not doing anything. So in this case, when you see like, oh, this engine coder is still working on programming the engine, it's not because the engine is far from completion. It's because if he's not working on that, then he's not working on anything at all, and everybody in their team needs to stay busy. So they're going to continue to optimize. They're going to continue to improve whatever their thing is until the game is done, because again, they only have the one project. So just because they're still working on this doesn't mean it's very, very far away from being completed, or that that's the point that they are in development. It could just be that, like, oh, the rest of the team is still trying to get this implemented, and so our art team is just gonna make more armor variety in the meantime, because they need something to do. So here we see some contact hardening shadows. So with it on, you can see that the shadow gets blurred a bit, which is a lot more realistic. In real life, you don't have shadows with like very hard, definite edges very often. Of course, you can, depending on lighting and whatnot, but more often than not, especially when the shadow is very far away from the object, it tends to get distorted and blurred, and so that's what they're showing here, and it looks pretty good. What faction does he like most? He likes the Battanians because of the aesthetics of their architecture and the moody atmosphere of their towns. And what was the most difficult challenge in making the engine for the game? So the main challenge in making an engine for Bannerlord was giving players huge battles with hundreds of characters and without sacrificing graphical quality or performance. So far, it seems like they've done that. We've seen videos of battles that are extremely large, many times larger than Warband, and the performance seems to hold up. Of course, with video, it's always difficult to tell, but the performance seems to hold up just fine, and I don't think that we'll have the same issues as with Warband, because the main issue with scaling up battles in Warband is that the engine couldn't handle it. It's not that the game was poorly optimized for PCs. It wasn't particularly well optimized for PCs, but the engine would hit a bottleneck well before, like your computer just couldn't handle it anymore. In some cases, people with low-end PCs, that might be true of their computers, but for example, I have a fairly high-end custom-built computer, and my Warband battles top out fairly low just because the engine can't handle, that many things happening on screen at once. And so by building their own engine, they are hopefully, getting around that issue, because they're designing this, with the specific intent of making sure that we can have these huge epic battles, because that's what this game is about, and still get, decent performance or good performance, and the graphical quality that we've seen throughout all the Bannerlord stuff so far, which seems to be very, very good. And then, is the engine completely finished, or are changes still being made to it? We're still making changes. We are constantly trying to improve visuals, performance, usability, modding, etc. I would call the current state of the engine as almost finished, so you should perceive these changes as releasing updates and patches to it in-house. We built a very solid foundation over the years, so adding features and improvements is not disruptive to development. We will try to increase the quality of the engine even after release, and we will be definitely using it for all projects for the foreseeable future. So yeah, this is basically what I was saying earlier. Even if things are done or near done, they're going to continue to work on them and develop them, because they have all these teams working on different parts of the game, and those teams need something to continue to work on, even if their particular thing is obviously not finalized, but close to a finished product, or what have you. They're going to keep improving it until the game is ready. So that was the developer blog for, what was it, February 22nd. Not a whole lot of info about anything specific with the game, other than we do have an idea of all these different editors that we'll have access to. I think they have been mentioned elsewhere before, though. We've also, I think, got more indication of where the game is maybe at in development than anything previously done. He talks more about progress than I think anybody else, so that's kind of nice. There's no discussion about what we're going to see next week, but generally the way that they format these is they'll do a Q&A one week, and then the next week it'll be something regarding lore. We've already had all the factions covered, so probably not going to be seeing any more of those unless they decide to go through all the individual sub-factions for each major faction. I don't think they will, because they sort of addressed those with the main factions as they went. But we'll see. We will certainly see. One thing I am going to work on, now that all the faction lore things have been put out, is I'd like to revisit the faction overview video that we did a couple years back. It's like my most popular video ever. But I would like to revisit that with all the new information that we have and sort of update it. It's going to be a new video. It's not like I'm going to cut into that one and change things to it. I'm just going to basically release a 2.0 version of it with all the lore that we know now, and clarify things a little bit. And also, I think we'll take another look at the map, because there was some, I'm not sure what the word is, that some people didn't quite understand the comparison with the map, and so I think I could clarify that better as well. And there's also been a little bit more information released about the map, so it'd be nice to revisit that as well, comparing it to the Warband map and size and regions and all that. But anyways, we'll leave it here for today. I'm not sure when I'll have that out. I am very, very busy with a lot of things outside of YouTube, so I don't know when I'll get around to it, but that is something I'm working on. And hopefully we get something interesting next week from our developer blog. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time talking about Bannerlord with you, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for hopefully next week's blog.